What's up, Warlocks? Coming at you with another cEDH deck tech. This time we're looking at Sisay Weatherlight Captain, my first ever and favorite cEDH deck, so excited to show it to you guys. Let's get into it. What's up, Warlocks? SLiME here. Today we are doing a Sisay deck tech. This is one of my favorite cEDH decks, actually my first ever cEDH deck too. I started playing it in my Go Shintai deck, which was considered a bracket 4 deck. It was in the 99, but I would often find myself, tutoring it up, and that would be a big card in the deck. And eventually I just turned it into a bracket 4 deck. It was pretty close to cEDH. It was just missing some of the fast mana and didn't have the exact lines that we play in cEDH for Sisay. So made the switch over a couple years before the bans, played it for a long time, but as soon as those bans hit, I thought the deck was dead. I didn't even try and keep it together. I scrapped it. I put TNT together and we called it good there. And so a big inspiration for me to get back into Sisay was Comedian winning a tournament like a year after the bans, right around then. He had a very interesting list, piqued my interest, and so put it together. Ever since then, I've been iterating on the list, making some changes, making it fit more of my playstyle. So let's get into it. All right, but before we get into it, I got a couple things I want to mention. First up, we got the Family Jewels In It to Win It cEDH tournament. This is going to be put on by the Wizards and Warlocks ourselves, 9 Mile Brewing, Midcoast Gaming. And so just an awesome cEDH tournament, June 27th at 10 a.m. start time. You're in it for a foil intuition judge promo, so definitely get there. Next up, we got the Summer Classic 3 Commander Convention put on by North Star cEDH. This one is another awesome event. It's $15K in prizing for the cEDH event. You got a time twister for first place. Plenty of other events, Legacy, Modern going on. It's a convention, so you got vendors and artists there. This one's July 18th. It's going to be an awesome convention, 2-day cEDH event, so you're not going to want to miss it. And last up, we got Breach the Bay 2. Cole and I, we went to Breach the Bay 1, so we got to make it out to the second one. August 22nd to 23rd, put on by Doot Loot and Merlion Games. 25K cEDH event. This is going to be massive. You got other events going on too, but I think we're all here for the cEDH event. See you there. So getting back into the deck, like I mentioned, started playing the deck a couple years before the bans, played it heavily. It was my only and main cEDH deck for the longest time. And then, really the idea of dropping the Planeswalker lines was what really got me interested again. A lot of the fights nowadays happen on the stack. And so having a Planeswalker that you can activate at sorcery speed felt clunky. I didn't like it. It was often large mana investments, and you had to buff Sisay by 3 or 4 to get to a Nicol Bolas or whatever it is. And so cutting those felt great. It lowers our curve. It makes it easier for us to kind of ramp things out. If we have a Chromatic Ori in our opening hand, it doesn't feel like a dead hand where we got to fight to get that out. So just, allowed the list to be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more nimble, and really just fits more of my play style. Thinking about open hands quickly, you're looking for a clear game plan. Typically, we're winning by turn 4, but if we can win by turn 3, that's great too. And that's what your hand should look like. Clear game plan. You've got things to do, an objective or pieces that help you work towards that objective. All right, so getting into the cards of the deck, I figure we start with our combos. And so we've got Selvala, Bloom Tender, Faber Elder, Derevi, Flash Thompson, Emil, Lightning Greaves. We got our Gaia's Cradle, Agatha line, Marvin and Irith line, and then our finishers, which are OBM and Mount Doom. Additionally, we're running the Thassa, Decon, and Tainapac lines. This is just a great option. Say you commit to a plan, you put a bunch of creatures on the board, turn 2 or 3, somebody board wipes you. It's a lot of recovery to get back from there. And so oftentimes, it could be playing Sisay, using one activation to go find Cutzel or a Teferi. You go to your next turn, you untap, you have 4 or 5 mana that you can dump into a Thassa, Tainted, or Decon. It's a clean way to win the game if you need it. And so getting into one of our main lines, which is kind of the Emil lines. For this one, we've got Selvala, Bloom Tender, and Faber Elder. These ones let you tap for, your 5 colors if you have 5 permanents of color on board. Or for Selvala, you get your Sisay to 5 power. You use a green, you tap it, add X mana, and any combination of colors. Sisay activation right there. And so we have cards like Derevi and Flash Thompson that when they ETB, they can untap these guys, allowing us to keep that chain going, as well as Emil, which will let us flicker the Derevi or Flash Thompson. Once again, untapping Selvala, Bloom Tender, Faber Elder, more Sisay activations, more mana, trying to push towards a win. And so another interesting card that I actually got this from Comedian, it's a little tech of his, is Lightning Greaves. With Lightning Greaves and Emil, you can use this to combo off with your Fabro, Selvala, or Bloom Tender just by moving the Lightning Greaves back and forth. And so we can move it to a Selvala to give it haste, then tap our Selvala, move it back to Emil because this gives Shroud so we can't target. And this will allow us to then use our 3 from an Emil, flicker the Selvala, we can bring the Lightning Greaves back, tap it, keep it going from there. And so sorcery speed, but dropping the Planeswalker lines and having this option still feels great. It allows you to do some crazy things where you can play out a bunch of dorks, play an Ancient Tomb, get an early game plan going, and then use this, move it around on your dorks, get a little bit extra mana, protect the Sisay, start your combo early, whatever it may be. Next up, we have our Agatha, Soul Cauldron, and Gaia's Cradle line. Gaia's Cradle, all we need is 5 creatures. With Agatha, we can use mana of any color to activate our creature's abilities. And so from here, we can start our Tutor Chain, tap for 5, put a search on the stack, grab a Derevi, untap. Another way is if we just have the Emil and Derevi out, we can tap the Gaia's Cradle, as long as we make 4, we can flicker it, create infinite green, and then once we have the infinite green, we can start flickering our other lands to get those other colors. Another thing that's great about Agatha's Soul Cauldron is the rest of its text, and so creatures you control with 1/1 counters on them have all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with Agatha's Soul Cauldron, and so we can tap it, exile target card from a graveyard. When a creature card is exiled this way, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. And so say somebody takes out our Bloom Tender, we can tap this, put a 1/1 counter on our Sisay, make it a Bloom Tender. It allows for some interesting lines and gives you the opportunity to come back if a creature gets blown up or something. And then next up, we got Marvin and Irith. And so Irith reads tap, untap another target permanent, or tap and untap 2 other target legendary creatures. And so with Marvin has all activated abilities of all creatures you control that don't have the same name as this creature. And so with something like our Enduring Vitality or Essica, we can, tap our Marvin and stuff to play out a Sisay. And from here, we can generate infinite mana just by tapping, one of our creatures, legendary creatures that can tap for mana, using Irith and Marvin to untap each other plus that 3rd creature. Then when we bring Agatha's Soul Cauldron into this line, we can kill our Irith somehow, tap Agatha's Soul Cauldron, put a 1/1 counter on creatures, and then, once we have an extra Irith or something, we can start going and untapping our Mount Doom, pinging everybody for 1. And so getting into how we win the game, we have Orcish Bowmaster that we can flicker over and over with Emil, or we have Mount Doom that we can untap over and over with Irith, with a Derevi, or things like that. So that's how we close it out. We've got these 2 cards just pinged down the table. Getting into the next group of cards, I figure we talk about card draw and some engines. So starting off, we got Wan Shi Tong. I'm a big fan of Wan Shi Tong in the list. It's replaced Archivist of Ogma for me. To me, it's a blue legendary creature that, buffs Sisay a little bit. It allows you to draw those couple extra cards every turn when people are searching, but it also works great with Derevi. Having the flying and vigilance allows you to get in for attacks. You can untap your Bloom Tenders, untap them, a Mana Dork, whatever it may be, get an extra Sisay activation. It just, having that vigilance and flying, it allows you to get in and work a little extra for you. Then we got Esper, probably one of my favorite draw engines in the deck. It's a creature, so it pushes towards your Gaia's Cradle line. It's cheap. You don't have to, manage it or keep an upkeep like a Mystic Remora. Less mana investment than a Rhystic Study, and we really don't need that many cards in our hand to push towards a win. Then we got a Rhystic Study. Rhystic Study is great in the deck. The one thing I'll say is have a plan around your Rhystic Study. You have to commit pieces to the board that, push towards that plan. And so having all these cards in your hand is great, but if you can't do anything with them, it sucks. And so allows you to get a little bit more interaction when you need to if you're pushing for a win, whatever it may be. Just be careful when you're playing it out. Sometimes it's better to wait a turn, not play out the Rhystic. Play your Bloom Tender or Fabro Elder, commit to that plan so you can progress, focus on winning on a turn 4. Then we got Mystic Remora. I'm a big fan of Mystic Remora in the list. I often play it on a turn 2. That way, on my turn 1, I can get a couple dorks out, have enough creatures that I can keep this Mystic around long enough until I'm ready to push for a win. I feel I don't need it, whatever it may be. And last up is Smothering Tithe, our best engine in the deck. It often allows us to do some crazy things when we have nothing on board but a Sisay. We get 15 treasures, we got 3 activations. We could just push for a win or do whatever we can to win from there. Then let's talk about some of the legendary permanents we have in the deck. Mine is pretty light. I really focus on using, tutors and other things to get to the, creatures that I want. and just have a couple, creatures that I focus on getting and build from there. And so we've got cards like Skrelv. This is a great early game piece. If I can get it out early, it can, don't have to use mana to tap it and protect Sisay or one of my creatures from a certain color. Solid piece, and often, good enough to help you close out the game or protect yourself during a push. Ragavan, red mana is one of the least common colors we have for legendary permanents in our deck, so an early game pip on that is great, but also the card advantage, every once in a while you'll get a tutor or something you can take advantage of. Treasures are great, helping you get towards those Sisay activations. So just a great piece to have, great early game tag. You can use the dash to, hit somebody who just Imperial Sealed or whatever it may be. We got Ruby, and so you've got 2 colors and a legendary creature to buff your Sisay. It's a mana dork, somewhat relevant, and so tapping for red is still needed for Sisay activations, one of our least common colors, so just having that on a creature is great. We've got Urtai. I've always been a big fan of Urtai in the list. It's, sometimes tough to get it on a Sisay activation, but when you can, and you have something like an Emil or a Relic of Legends out, you can tap your Urtai to pay for 1 of the Emil Flicker and, constantly, destroy creatures or planeswalkers, counter spells, activated abilities, or triggered abilities. It can come in clutch, and giving somebody a card when you're doing a push or something can hurt, but oftentimes it works out. Tyvar is huge in the deck. It allows you to activate abilities of creatures you control as though they had haste. And so green is one of our most common colors for Sisay buffs. It's going to be a little less relevant, but having that black pip is more relevant. And so if I have my Selvala out and, let's say I have a Selvala and a Ragavan out, I can grab my Tyvar. That will get me my third color for a buff. That way I can go grab a meal from there or something. The rest of it is not completely irrelevant. We can +1 to untap another target creature. And so oftentimes what I can do from here is I'll have 9 mana. I have enough for 1 Sisay activation. I can grab a Tyvar. I can untap something. I can go grab another permanent. And so still relevant enough to be worth it. The bottom text can bite you in the ass, but I still think it's good too in a pinch situation. You -2 to mill 3 cards, then you may return a creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to your battlefield. And so oftentimes I'm only doing this if Bloom Tender or Lotho or something's already in the bin. I can just -2, get it back on the battlefield, get ready for a push that turn or next turn, whatever it may be. Then we got Cabbage Merchant, another great card in the deck, very similar to Lotho, just having every time somebody plays a non-creature, you get food. Oftentimes when you get 10 20 foods, you're in a really good spot, have more than enough mana to help push towards a win. Then we have Lotho, which is my opinion a little bit better than Cabbage Merchant. Sometimes one triggers more than the other, but I think Lotho is strictly better because of its color pips and buffing Sisay by 2. And so green is one of our most common colors for our legendary permanents in the deck. Having a white or black pip on Sisay is great. It, unlocks some things, and oftentimes getting 3 treasures, 4 treasures off of a Lotho can be enough to push towards a win. We got Kinnan, just great in the deck. We got 5 treasures and a Kinnan out. That's 2 Sisay activations, but additionally, its activated ability isn't completely irrelevant either. Say I have a board out, I can't get my Mount Doom, somebody's blown it up, I can't get it back on the battlefield. We can just activate our, Kinnan ability over and over until we finally hit OBM, and then just start the chain from there. Deadpool is great to help you win the game. It's got 2 great colors, being black and red. Often red is the last color we get, and so when we're doing Bloom Tender activations with, Derevi and Emil, sometimes before we're trying to push for a win, we might have to grab a Deadpool, get 1 more color so we have 1 more available mana for an Emil activation. But also it can be used kind of as interaction, switching the text box with somebody's Kinnan, somebody's Thrasios, just to shut them out of the game if we need to. Can definitely come in clutch in those situations too. We got Taru, ETB, it draws a card for you and your opponent, and whenever an opponent draws a card and it's not their turn, you create a tap treasure. And so once again, you get 3 or 4 treasures off this, and that just can be enough to help you push towards a win. So great include in the deck. I think it performs better in Sisay than most decks that run it, and so worth the include. We've got Tam, Mindful First Year. This is one that I've gone back and forth on in the deck several times. Its static ability is each other creature you control has hexproof from each of its colors, and so somebody's trying to sword your Sisay, you got protection, whatever it may be. It's not that relevant, but it does come up sometimes. What's more relevant, I think, is to tap it, target creature you control becomes all colors until end of turn. And so can definitely enable some crazy early pushes where, you somehow get Tam and Bloom Tender both out on the battlefield first turn. And you still have 3 mana, you tap that, you play out your Sisay, you've got a Sisay activation right there that you can go grab Derevi, start your chain. Definitely crazy. How often that comes up, I don't know if it's enough for it to be worth it. And I don't know if I fully need it in the deck. I've probably activated it one time to give a target permanent all colors because I needed to, where most situations I just have enough colors on the field to be able to win. Next up, we got Cutzel. Stops our opponents from casting things during our turn, often just shuts them up, lets you, push for your win in peace. And last up, we got Teferi Time Raveler. Same thing as Cutzel, but can honestly be a little bit better in situations. Each opponent can cast spells only anytime they could cast a sorcery. And so most situations, it's the person before you's end step. And you do a Sisay activation, it resolves, you pull out your Teferi. At that point, nobody can do anything. And so you're safe going into your next turn. And then its minus ability can be relevant in some situations too. You -3 to return up to 1 target artifact, creature, enchantment to its owner's hand and draw a card. And so somebody has a curse totem or some creature that's shutting down your game plan. You get this out, you -3 it, you bounce that, you're able to push for a win. Next up, we got our mana dorks. And so we already talked about Enduring Vitality or Essica, but just to talk about them a little bit more, Enduring Vitality is great, just allowing you to turn on all your creatures so they can tap for mana. Maybe you pushed with a Thassa line early on and it got stopped. Now that Thassa taps for mana, it's not completely irrelevant anymore. It also is great that when somebody, tries to kill it, it comes back as an enchantment, so you still can do that. Essica, I know a lot of people were off it for a while. I've always been a fan because of what it can do with Derevi. And so it gives your other legendary creatures vigilance. And so I may put a Sisay activation on the stack in my main phase 1, go find an Essica. Now those creatures can tap for mana, but I can also go into combat, swing with 4 or 5 legendary creatures. That's going to put 4 or 5 Derevi triggers on the stack to untap those creatures. I can tap them all, put an activation on the stack, untap them. I have another activation. Does some cool things and can definitely be clutch. And then from here, we got Noble Hierarch, Birds of Paradise, Avacyn's Pilgrim, Deathrite Shaman, and Ignoble Hierarch. Avacyn's Pilgrim is the only one I think is worth talking about. I know a lot of people are on Delighted Halfling. I found myself in too many situations where it's great to, tap it to play out a legendary creature and it can't be countered. That didn't come up often enough for me to care about having it in the deck. And I feel like I have enough interaction where most situations I can just use one of those to protect it. And so I'd rather have Avacyn's that it taps for a white. I can tap it to play out my Sisay early on, but I can also use that mana towards a Sisay activation. From here, these are your basics. These are great. I feel like you need them in the deck. If you don't, you're kind of slowing yourself down. Next up, we got artifacts. And so I think the best artifact in our deck is Relic of Legends. Pay 3, tap it to add 1 mana of any color, but then we can tap and untap legendary creature we control to add 1 mana of any color too. This is just another thing that unlocks your Sisay lines. You go and tutor for a creature, you tutor for your Lotho, you still got, that Sisay activation costs 4 basically, because now that Lotho or whatever you grab can also tap for a mana. And so when you're fighting on the stack and, you've got your Urtai and a meal or whatever it may be, can be clutch. It's just a great card. Allows you to advance your game plan and kind of manage a board state too, keeping mana available for interacting, whatever it may be. We've got Mana Vault in the deck, and honestly, I would probably cut this card if it wasn't for Smothering Tithe. It's really there to help you get that out, having the ability to play out a Mana Vault turn 1, and then, tap it, you tap your land, you got a Smothering Tithe turn 2. Just allows you to do that line a little bit faster, so worth the include. From here, it's pretty basic. We got a Lotus Petal, Chrome Mox, Soul Ring, Felwar Stone, Arcane Signet, Mox Amber, and Mox Diamond. Pretty basic package there. All things that allow us to put more Sisay activations on the stack a little bit faster. Soul Ring can help us get a, Arcane Signet out, help us get our, the Cabbage Merchant out, get some other spells or creatures out a little bit faster, push faster. And so next up, we're going to talk about our tutors. We've got Finale of Devastation, Core to Calling, Demonic Tutor, Vampire Tutor, Enlightened Tutor, Green Sun Zenith, Eladamri's Call, and Worldly Tutor. A little bit more tutors, I feel like, than most Sisay players run. I feel like it's just worth it. Like I said, most of the time I'm just trying to find 1 or 2, legendary creatures that can help me push towards my game plan. And so having the ability to, spend 4 mana and just put a Lotho on the field, or specifically for Finale, say my Bloom Tender gets blown up or whatever it may be, I can spend 4 mana and search my graveyard, bring my Bloom Tender back. Court Calling, I can win on the stack sometimes, or put a creature into play like a Deadpool or Urtai or something if I don't have a Sisay out. But also, like I said, winning on the stack, being able to just tutor up a Thassa's Oracle, I've got Decon or Tainted Pact in my hand, that's the stack battle. I just won it. The rest from here I feel like are kind of basic. Demonic Tutor and Vamp Tutor, we got to include those. Enlightened Tutor is great. We can find our Rhystic Studies or Smothering Ties. We can find our Marvin. We can find our Lightning Greaves, whatever it may be. So can come in clutch. Also worth mentioning that we can grab things like the Touch the Spirit Realm or Colossal Sky Turtle, which can be used as interaction or help us, protect our win, bring something back from the graveyard. Green Sun Zenith, it's just, 1 green plus X. We can go find a Bloom Tender for 3 mana. Oftentimes, if I have a turn 1, Mox Diamond at a land, I might just use it to go grab a Bob, help us get a little bit more mana faster, whatever it may be. So a low investment creature tutor, green creature tutor, can be great sometimes. Worldly Tutor, I still think it's great. Just, hey, let me just go grab Bloom Tender. I don't care if you know what it is. It's coming out either way. Just doing that on an M step. Eladamri's Call, same thing. We can do this during a turn cycle. We're getting treasures off a Smothering Tithe, that, a Lotho, so we've got a little extra mana. But also it can just come in clutch. We go grab a Wan Shi Tong, we go grab our Flash Thompson, Urtai, whatever it may be. We can grab those. Those have flash speed. We can play it on the stack. Oftentimes just having to pay the 1 extra mana to put it in your hand is worth it. And so next up we got Interaction. I talked about this one a little bit, but Colossal Sky Turtle, if we're casting it, we're down real bad. But the fact that it's an enchantment, we can go tutor it up with a Enlightened Tutor or something like that. It has channel abilities, which are pretty tough to interact with, so kind of clutch when we're trying to do something. We could pay 1 and a blue, discard to return target creature to his owner's hand. So maybe, there's a stacks piece that's slowing us down or stopping us from winning. We can get rid of that. Hard to interact with there. They can't counter it. Or pay 2 and a green, discard, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. So sometimes you get blown up, your Bloom Tender's gone, your Emil's gone, whatever it may be. We pay the 3 to green, we can bring it back to our hand, play it out again, try again on a push. Then we have Touch the Spirit Realm. I think is still a great piece of interaction in this deck. Like I said, channel abilities are great. Sometimes I'll cast it for its actual ability to exile something, but most of the time I'm just channeling it. That way I can sometimes protect my own artifact or creature, till the end of turn, try and push again on the next turn. Or maybe it's, there's a stacks piece out or something that I can just get rid of for a turn, give me the opportunity to push in that moment. Then we got Silence, pretty basic, stopping our opponents from casting spells. 1 mana, great investment to help us win the game. Legolas's Quick Reflexes can be interesting. Split Second is definitely some relevant text. Stopping people from responding on top of this, allowing us to untap a target creature, could put another Sisay activation on the stack right then. But it's also, until end of turn, that creature gains hexproof, reach, and whenever this creature becomes tapped, it deals damage equal to its power up to 1 target creature. And so maybe I have Enduring Vitality and I've got my OBM with an Orc army that's 20/20. I can then tap that Orc army for a mana, but still, blow up a Ob Nixilis or a stacks piece that's stopping me from winning. So can be some relevant text. Untapping a Bloom Tender is clutch, getting another Sisay activation. Pretty sweet card for the list. We've got Abrupt Decay, great piece of interaction here too. This spell can't be countered. Destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. Most of the time, the pieces that are stopping us from winning are 3 mana or less. And so having something that can't be countered, we can just destroy it, allows us to do so easily and, can be nice. Next up, we got Dismember. It's 1 Phyrexian black. Target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn. And so the reason we run Dismember is we can just spend 1 mana of any. We want to make sure we have our Sisay activations available. And so even just tapping a Soul Ring or something, just so we can, pay the 4 life, kill whatever is, holding us up and unlock us from there. It's just nice to have something that you don't have to require a certain color of mana to kill a creature that's slowing you down or stopping you. From here, we got Deflecting SWAT, and pretty basic from here. We got Mental Misstep, Fierce Guardianship, MBT, Flusterstorm, Force of Will, Pact Negation, Swan Song, and Miscast. pretty heavy on interaction, a little bit more, I feel, than most Sisay lists. I'm pretty happy with it. I feel like I said, most of my battles happen on the stack, and so having this much interaction is great. So last up, we got our lands. We already talked about Gaia's Cradle and Mount Doom. Great cards. It's pretty basic from here. Just five color great stuff. We got all our colors, our starting towns. Otawara Boseiju can be relevant. Tarnished Citadel is a pretty common land for 5-color decks. Exotic Orchard, all basic stuff. I think the two worth talking about is Ancient Tomb and Forbidden Orchard. Starting with Ancient Tomb, it can be great. You just got to be careful with it in your hand. You've got to make sure that, like I said, we're trying to push on turn 4. And so if we have this in our hand, make sure that plan still allows us to push early. It sometimes just, having the colorless in your hand can be dead. It's great for getting Sisay out, great for getting some of those artifacts out, the Cabbage Merchant, stuff like that. Just make sure you have a plan that follows with this card. And then Forbidden Orchard, I know we're in a meta where creatures are very relevant. Gaia's Cradle is really good, but one more land that taps from 1 mana of any color is great. I've often found that when I'm at a table, there's one person that benefits the least off the creature or doesn't benefit at all, so I can get away cleanly with it. But there's also kind of a sneaky line that you can do with this. And so say for some reason, you have all your creatures on board, but you don't have your Mount Dooms or your finishers with OBMs. You can do a funny thing where you actually untap Forbidden Orchard over and over with a meal, and you already generate infinite mana. You can then start untapping Forbidden Orchard over and over to start giving your opponents infinite 1/1 creatures. You give them all 1,000,000 creatures. Then from there, you can flicker your Deadpool over and over, swapping the text box with all those 1/1s. So when they untap on their turn, they'll lose 1,000,000 life from all those 1/1s. It kills them. Pretty cool line. If you're doing it, you're down real bad, but it's there if you need it. All right, so before getting into some test hands, I figure we take a look at some cards in the deck that I don't run and a lot of other people run. So we already talked about it a little bit. Planeswalker lines, I just wanted to move away from them. I wanted more opportunities to win on the stack. Having the ability to only activate these at sorcery speed sucks. They can be clunky when you get them out early. You have an Amanatu in your hand. You try and use it as a little advantage. Now somebody swings in with an Omnix, kills your Amanatu. So just wanted to move away from these clunky lines, and more opportunities to win on the stack feels great. Better card quality, and so feeling better without these in the deck. Archivist of Agma, I already talked about a little bit. Just replaced this with Wan Shi Tong. Not legendary here, legendary there, so a little better. Basim was great for the time being. It's in 2 colors. That was great, but I just, didn't feel that it was enough value for it to be worth it, and not too mad about cutting it. Chainer is something that I often talk about going back on the list. I often thinking about moving more towards, taking advantage of the graveyard and stuff like that. And so it being a 4-mana creature, I really try and limit the amount of 4-drop permanents in the deck, but the ability to discard your Bloom Tender and, cast your Bloom Tender from the graveyard and have it come in with haste is great. Something gets blown up a turn and you can discard a card and cast it again. Great. It was just a great card to have in the list. Chromatic Ori, as I mentioned, it's great for Sisay lines, but you got to work towards 7 or 8 mana or, 7 mana or 8 Sisay power. And so it's something I just didn't want to be on. Having this in your opening hand and being like, well, I can get to 4 or 5 mana by turn 3, but not 7. So just could be clunky. Didn't really like it. Crop Rotation is a card that I'll probably move back onto soon. I've been thinking about taking advantage of things like Badger Mole Cub, taking advantage of the Gaia's Cradle lines a little bit more. And so this could find its way back into the list. Cultist of the Absolute, great card, buffing Sisay by 4, kind of the downsides of having to sacrifice a creature every upkeep. It was solid for the time being, but like I said, I'm not on the Chromatic Ori lines. I'm not on these big investment, lines, and so don't really need it anymore. Sometimes I think about putting Cyclonic Rift back in the deck, but I feel like I'm in a spot where I don't really need it. I have a couple pieces that I can use to shut down somebody's game plan, a lot of interaction that I can use, and so moving off this feels fine for now. Who knows? Maybe it'll change. Already talked about Delighted Halfling. Elvish Spirit Guide is a card I go off and on pretty often. It's great for the early game, can help you push towards a Sisay activation late game. I found that I just want to keep more stable mana or reoccurring mana in the deck. And so I'm off it for now. There's a chance once these new Shang-Chi and the Captain America cards come out, I might go back on it. But as of now, I'm off it. Galadriel's Dismissal is great. Target creature phases out. If you kick it, you phase out all their creatures. I've just found that I'd rather be on something like a Touch the Spirit Realm or something that I'm not limited to just creatures. And so great card. Don't think you need it in the list. You could be on it. It's up to you. Into the Flood Maw isn't a bad card here either. Maybe you just want a little bit more creature removal, bounce something so you can push on a turn. Not bad. Wouldn't be mad if you put this in the deck. K9 Mark 1 was fine for the time being. Legendary artifact creature that's a blue pip, so you can tutor it up funny ways, do some cool things with it. Not too often was the Ward 1 relevant enough to be worth it, and you're never using it to give a legendary creature unblockability. Catilda was a card I saw a lot of people trying out. I never really tested it, put it into considering. It has a nice ability making your Sisay tap for mana or whatever it may be. Just never found we had enough human creatures for it to be worth it. I'd love to be on a Mox Opal, but just feel that our artifact count isn't high enough. Oftentimes enough, it's just going to be a dead card on your turn 1 or 2, so can't run it. Feels good to be off Nicol Bolas and Oath of Teferi. Already talked about those. Felia is fine. I just never really liked the card. Having to swing out with it to get the triggered ability, it can be tough sometimes, especially during this kind of creature heavy meta. Pippin, just another way to protect your creatures on your field. Relevant sometimes. I'd rather be on Skrelv than this. I'm on Tam, so don't feel we need it. Plateau was run before we got Starting Town. Now, Saheeli Rai is like the last planeswalker that I cut. The -2 ability of creating a Toki that is target artifact or creature control and it gains haste was definitely relevant. The fact that it's blue and red pips for your Sisay buff, and so with cards like Saheeli, Bloom Tender, and your Sisay out, you've got 4 colors right there. All you're missing is black. Oftentimes you can put it activation on the stack, go grab that last piece, push for a win there. It's awesome, does some crazy things. That said, I just don't feel that we really need this card anymore. Sakashima is a great clone in the deck. I feel like this was just replaced with Deadpool when that came out, but having the ability to pay 2 and 2 blue to return to your hand, you could do some funny lines with this sometimes, but most of the time you're just, cloning your Derevi, cloning whatever it may be to get some more Sisay activations. I've never really been a fan of the One Ring in the deck. Like I said, I really try and limit the amount of 4 drops and higher that I have in the list. And also, like I said, card draw isn't all that necessary. We just need a couple extra cards to help us push for a win oftentimes, and so having this wasn't all that necessary. Dorgle's another legendary mana dork that isn't too bad. I feel like it's really Ruby or this. Having the ability to tap for 1 mana of any color is relevant. Maybe if I had more dogs or wolves in the deck, I'd include it, but I think we're fine with Ruby. And then last up, Wishclaw Talisman. Great tutor, but I don't feel like we need it, especially if we're giving our opponent the tutor to use later. And then just taking a quick peek at my considering. Oftentimes, I'm keeping up with all the Sisay tech and, looking at the discords, just trying to figure out what everybody's doing. And so I'll add stuff to my considering just to keep an eye on it and, see if there's anything else out there that I want to try. All right, so now that we've broken down the deck, let's take a look at some test hands, see how it plays out, and kind of what we're looking for in an opening hand, what we're trying to do by turn 4. So we'll cut. And so looking at our first 7, we got a Lotho, Colossal Sky Turtle, Wooded Foothills, Deadpool, Tam, Mount Doom, and Eladamri's Call. Not a bad hand, but it's just kind of too slow for me. I can get that Lotho out turn 2, get some mana off of that. Could be solid. Maybe if I was on a lower bowl, I'd keep this. I just feel like I could do better. All right, let's take a look at a second 7. We got a Green Sun Zenith, Wan Shi Tong, Bloom Tender, Exotic Orchard, Cut Soul, Underground Sea, and a Demonic Consultation. This hand's kind of close. Maybe if we could do some things with the Bloom Tender and Green Sun, I'd be down, but we can't, we don't know what our pot is without any players in front of us, so this could not tap for green. This definitely doesn't tap for green. We got to pitch it and go to 6. All right, looking at our 6, we got a Mana Confluence, Wan Shi Tong, Volcanic Island, Bloom Tender, Finale of Devastation, City of Brass, and Relic of Legends. This seems like a keepable 6. We got that Bloom Tender, which is a key piece of our game plan. Wan Shi Tong can help us get some more cards. We got the Relic of Legends, which is great for helping us push towards the win. We can use Finale to grab Bloom Tender out of the bin if it gets killed, or go grab a Lothar or whatever else we need to progress our game plan. And so let's move this hand over here and think about how we'd play this one out. And so starting off, I'll just play, my Mana Confluence as my land for turn 1. Draw for turn is a Pact of Negation, so we can save that for later. Then we'll go to our turn 2. We'll draw Savannah, and so I can just play this out. Maybe I'll play out my City of Brass first, just so we have that available in case we get wheeled. And so from here, I'll tap, take 2, and probably just play out my Bloom Tender. We want that around, and so it doesn't have Summoning Sickness next turn. We can use the mana to help advance our game plan even further. We'll go to our turn 3 and draw. It's a Tataru Taru. And so from here, I'll untap my lands. I can play out a Savannah as my land for turn. I can then tap my 2 lands for 2 blue to play out my Wan Shi Tong. I can tap Bloom Tender for 2, tap the Savannah for the 3rd to play out a Relic of Legends. And from here, tap Relic of Legends, Wanshi Tong. I can play out a Tataru Taru, have somebody else draw a card. We'll draw a card ourselves. It's a Mox Diamond, and we'll also get a treasure token off that. Here's our treasure token. Don't forget it's tapped. And so off that draw here too, we've got a Mox Diamond, so might as well play that out. We'll discard this. And so at this point, I'm feeling pretty confident. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana without the Relic of Legends and Bloom Tender. So we're definitely going to have a couple Sisay activations. Still need to get our Sisay out, but I'm not feeling worried and feeling pretty set up for the next turn. And so going into our next turn, we'll untap, and draw for turn is Enlightened Tutor. And so it doesn't really help us in this situation. From here, we can just tap 3, play out our Sisay. And from here, there's a couple different ways I could play it out. Most situations, I'm waiting to push for a win as long as possible. I might use that finale, go grab myself a Lotho, set myself up a little bit more. That way I can just win on the stack at some point. But, you know, let's say it's our turn, nobody has any interaction. Let's just go for it. And so we can tap our Bloom Tender. It'll tap for green, blue, white. And then we can tap Relic of Legends and our Mox Diamond for the last 2. Now, just for reference, we have a blue and a white legendary permanent. And so Sisay is currently a 4/4, and we can go search for a 3-drop or less. And so I'll go search. And so off that first Sisay activation, we can go and grab our Derevi. That will ETB and untap our Bloom Tender. And at this point, we still only have green, white, and blue. So we'll just tap our Bloom Tender for the 3. We can tap our Derevi, sack our treasure for the last 2. And from here, we'll go grab one more thing before we grab our Emil. And so off that activation, we can grab Deadpool. It will come in, swap text box with Derevi. That will untap our Bloom Tender again. And at this point, we've got all 5 colors. Bloom Tender taps for all 5 colors. We've also got the Relic of Legends, so we've got a little bit more mana if we need to. Tap our Bloom Tender, put a Sisay activation on the stack. We're now buffed by all 5 colors, so Sisay is a 7/7. We can grab anything in our deck. We'll go ahead and grab Emil. From here, with Emil out, we can just tap 3 creatures, use 3 mana to flicker our Derevi. It'll ETB, untap our Bloom Tender, put another Sisay activation on the stack. Now with this Sisay activation, we can just go grab our Mount Doom, and at this point, infinite mana. And now at this point with the infinite mana from Emil, Derevi, and Bloom Tender, we can start using that infinite mana to flicker our Mount Doom, and every time we'll tap, pay the red and the black. After going through that hand, I think I realized I didn't mulligan for that one, so hard to say what I would have done in that situation. It could have maybe just been the finale of Devastation. I had some pretty solid stuff in hand and didn't feel like I needed it exactly. Looking at another test hand, we've got a Wooded Foothills, Soul Ring, Boseiju, Faber Elder, Pact of Negation, Ezeka, and Volcanic Island. Once again, a pretty solid hand. We got a turn 1 play with the Soul Ring, then play out a Fabro turn 2. We've got an Ezeka that we can use to tap our Sisay and legendary permanents for mana, as well as that Boseiju. Probably going to have to use it as a land drop, but we have it as an interaction in case, as well as that Pact. So thinking this one through again a little bit, we'll draw for our first turn, and it's Ignoble Hierarch. Honestly, probably a better play for turn 1. And so we can play out our Wooded Foothills and crack it. And so we'll grab a Savannah here. We can tap our Ignoble Hierarch for a green, and so we can use this for the white to play out our Fabro next turn. Now turn 1, we'll just tap, play out our Ignoble Hierarch, and pass the turn from there. Going into turn 2, we'll untap, draw Legolas's Quick Reflexes, save that in the bank for later. We can play out our Volcanic Island for turn 1, tap that for our Soul Ring, tap our Soul Ring, have a colorless floating, green and a white here to play out Faber Elder. Don't really have a need for that 1 white or 1 colorless, so we can just pass the turn, go to our next one. Untap for turn 3, draw for turn, and we got a Bayou. And so instead of having to play the Boseiju, we can play this out for turn. And now what I can do here is I'll tap my Soul Ring and my Savannah, play out my Sisay. And at this point, I have options. I could either do a Sisay activation, but I think it's probably best that I just tap and play out this Ezeka as well. That way I can go into my next turn. I'll have 2 more mana, but I also have the option to go grab Derevi off of Sisay activation if I can buff Sisay by 1 more. From there, I can do that in my main phase 1, have these guys up so I can get some Derevi untapped, maybe take advantage of that. We'll untap and go to turn 4, and our draw for turn is a Wanshi Tong. And so let's say we haven't had the need to use our Boseiju. Let's just play it out as our land for turn. And so at this point, once again, I'm feeling pretty good. I've got my Faber Elder out, plenty of mana on board. That Ezeka can help if we need it, but in this situation, we don't really need it. And so we can tap our Faber over 2, green, white, blue, black, and a red. And from here, we'll put a Sisay activation on the stack. Currently, Sisay is only buffed by 1, being the Essica, and so we have to grab a 2 or less. And so we'll go search. Off of this search, I'm actually going to grab a Kinnan here. That way I can take advantage of these guys tapping for mana and generate a little bit extra. And so from here, I'll tap my Boseiju to play out the Legolas's quick reflexes, targeting my Faber Elder so I can untap it. Now also it has hexproof, and whenever I tap it, it deals damage equal to his power to another creature, so somewhat relevant there. Once again, Sisay gets buffed by another one, so it's a 4/4. I can go search for 3 or less, and at this point, we'll tap for green, white, blue, plus an extra blue. We'll have 1 blue floating. We'll tap here for 2 black, leave a black floating. Tap here for 2 red, leave a red floating. Use the rest of it for a Sisay activation and go search. Once again, from here, we'll grab our Derevi. It'll ETB and untap our Faber Elder. And now at this point, we can tap for green, white, blue again. We'll tap for green, white, blue. Use the extra red of the black. We'll generate another extra blue, because why not? And go search. Off this search again, we'll grab our Deadpool. It'll ETB, swap text box with Derevi. Come in, untap Fabro. And at this point, we can tap for all 5 colors. We'll generate an extra blue when we tap. Use the other 5 to go put a Sisay activation on the stack. From here, we can once again grab Emil. We have 3 mana available, but we also have 3 here. So either way, we could get that, start the chain, flicker our Derevi, untap our Faber Elder, tap it again, start generating infinite mana, do 1 more search, go find our Mount Doom, ping the table down until they're dead again. Pretty simple. Once again, turn 4, pretty clean. All right, let's take a look at 1 more mulligan. Starting off, we got Enduring Vitality, Green Sun Zenith, the Cabbage Merchant, Bayou, Tataru, Marvin, and Deflecting Swat. This hand's pretty close. If I had a little bit of, mana acceleration or another land, I might keep it. We don't, so I just got to pitch it and go to second 7. Starting off, we got Command Tower, Mox Amber, Lotho, Tam Mindful First Year, Birds of Paradise, Verdant Catacombs, and a Lotus Petal. For a first 7, this is what I call a Sisay 7. It's a great hand. We've got options. We've got literally so many things we can do that it's going to be great. And so move my deck off screen, just putting it a little closer so you can see me draw. Let's take a look at how this plays out. So our draw for turn 1, we get a Skrelv, which not a bad draw right there. And so thinking it through, we could play out the Verdant Catacombs, try and thin out our deck a little bit. I just kind of want to see what I draw, so I'm just going to play out our Command Tower to start. We'll play out our Lotho. We'll crack both for the we'll play out our Lotus Petal and crack both for the Lotho. From here, we can play out our Mox Amber. And then we can actually tap the Mox Amber to play out a Skrelv. So pretty solid turn 1. Then we'll untap and go into our turn 2. And our draw for turn is a Mana Vault. Let's say people were playing kind of slow on turn 1, didn't want to play into the Lotho, and so I only got 1 treasure. So Mana Vault, draw for turn. We could play out Verdant Catacombs and go crack it. I'll grab a Trop Island off the Verdant, as all I have left in my hand is a Tam and Bob, so just want to make sure we have mana for both of those. And so we'll tap 1, play out the Bop. We can tap our Mox Amber to play out our Mana Vault, trigger our Lotho, tap our Mana Vault, use 2 of it to play out a Sisay, tapping our Command Tower, and then use 1 and a treasure to play out our Tam. And so pretty crazy turn 2. Definitely accelerated our board state and feeling pretty ready to go off on turn 3. And so going into our next turn, let's say we got another 2 treasures. And so we're at 3 treasures. We'll untap, Mana Vault stays tapped, draw for turn, and get a Vampiric Tutor. Not the most relevant draw right now, unless we tutored up something certain with Sisay so we can draw a card. But let's just say, we save it until our next turn, play it on the stack at some point. But from here, we've currently got a Sisay that's +4/+4. And we can search for a lot of stuff. And so turn 3, typically in this situation, once again, I'm waiting it out as long as I can. I'm letting people activate my Lotho, just play out the game, progress my board state by giving me more treasures and stuff. And so we could say we waited it out. We got another 3 treasures off this rotation. And so went through another turn rotation, got another 3 treasures, about to get back to my turn. But before we do, let's put a Sisay activation on the stack. At this point, we could probably just push for a win here, but let's say, we just want to be extra protected. So we'll put our Sisay activation on the stack and go grab Teferi. Now at this person's end step, nobody can do anything. Each opponent can only cast spells as they could at sorcery speed. And so end step, they can't do anything. We still got a mana to use a Vampiric Tutor. We don't even need it. And so we'll go to our next turn and we'll untap. We'll untap and we'll draw for turn, which is the Tundra. We can just play that out as our land for turn. From here, let's put a Sisay activation on the stack. And so at this point, there's kind of a couple different ways we could do it. We could go grab Tyvar and Selvala, use Tyvar to untap Bop. That way we have the mana to activate it. Just to switch it up a little bit, I went ahead and grabbed Gaia's Cradle. And so at this point, we can only tap it for 5 green. So we're still going to need to use our last 5 treasures, put another Sisay activation on the stack. We can then go and find Agatha's Soul Cauldron. And so with Agatha's Soul Cauldron, spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate abilities of creatures we control. And so from here, tap for our 5, put a Sisay activation on the stack. Once again, with the activation, we'll go and find Derevi, TBs, untaps our Gaia's Cradle. We can now tap for 6. We'll generate an extra, put another Sisay activation on the stack. We'll have the 1 floating. And so off this activation, once again, we'll find Deadpool. It'll switch text box with Derevi, ETB, untap. We can then tap our Gaia's Cradle for 7 mana, going up to 3 floating. Put another search on the stack. Once again, we find Emil. At this point, we can use the 3, flicker Derevi, untap Gaia's Cradle. And like I said, if we didn't have this Agatha, we had a way to get Derevi and Emil. We could still do this. Untap the Gaia's Cradle over and over until we generate infinite green. And from here, we can just start untapping our command tower to generate the other colors. But we got the Agatha Soul Cauldron, and so we just use the mana, start flickering, generate more infinite mana, put another Sisay activation on the stack, go find Mount Doom, flicker Derevi again with our infinite mana, untap Mount Doom, use that infinite mana to tap Mount Doom, deal 1 damage to each opponent. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I feel like we probably could have pushed for a win on that turn 3. We don't have opponents in front of us, creating our treasures or doing interaction with the board, but feel like we could have gotten there either way, pushed there on turn 4, clean win, and a clean push. So that's a quick look at Sisay. Like I said, I've been playing the deck for a long time. I feel like I'm not the best coach for the deck or do the best job talking about the deck. So if I missed anything, you have questions, hit me in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them. But yeah, I've been playing the deck for a long time. I feel like I know the lines pretty well. There's always these nooks and crannies and different things that you can do. Like I said, I love getting the early game Derevi, even though it's, it can be threatened by interaction, but getting that early game Derevi, going in for some attacks, getting some extra Derevi untaps, definitely some weird things you could do. Lightning Greaves goes crazy. Having the Thassa Decon Tainted Pack lines in there is very relevant if you get blown out or you just want an early game win. Sisay doesn't really have the ability to push for that turn 2 win anymore. And sometimes turn 3. Turn 3 can be pretty tough. And so you develop an early board state of just mana, and then you can just Thassa Decon on your next turn, wins games. And so worth the include. Love the deck. Been playing it for a long time. Hope you guys like what you're seeing here. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.